So it surpasses several levels which it doesn't need to surpass. For example, the information about this particular conference, for example, if it is not known by the next town, by someone in Mombasa, then it beats logic that why would that happen? So I'm looking at a situation where we need to localize issues. Because even in the mainstream media, a lot of information is being pushed forward for publication. But it has to go through some process for specific information pieces to be published or to be shared. Along the way, so much is lost. So we need to start repackaging ourselves at our own level, for example, as a community of Kibugat, to start sharing our own information with ourselves. So we make a situation where we are communicating our own issues within ourselves before we share it out. Through this process, it may be known outside or not, but what matters most is that do the people in that particular locality, are they aware of what's happening in their localities? And then it will be built on from there. For example, we have so much local contents in our own communities that is rarely shared. We have so many good practices and case studies involving all sectors of development, it be social, economic, agricultural, or whichever, which we have built on for a long time, starting from the days of our forefathers till now. And there are so many things that are happening that no one knows about them because they're not being shared. So the issue of local content sharing should be factored in citizen journalism, but specifically someone needs to take a role. For example, when this someone needs to be Kibugat ICT Centre with the representation from all over the community around here. So citizen journalism can build up from that level as we move on. Because I believe these are centers that can be empowered enough to ensure that we share our information. Even there's that aspect of sharing for purposes of people knowing, and then purposes of sharing to bring a change. For example, if can we lobby and advocate for things that are not happening right here, but using our own resources that we already have.
Thanks. I think that's a really, really important point. A year and a half ago when we came, first time I brought students across, and we worked with Leonard and his colleagues. The students worked with them on community reporting, as community reporting training. And we brought the flip cameras over, and we took them out, and they learned how to ask questions, to identify stories, to storyboard and to create the content. We created a content management space, rather perhaps idealistically at the time, hoping that we could then provide the training for the young people from the ICT Centre to create the content and post it online. What we didn't understand at that time was the problems with internet connectivity here. So maybe, having learned that lesson, maybe the next step is to take another step back, so to use the flips that the communities have here to continue that community training, community reporting, for them to train other young people to, and then to create a space on the network, because all of these computers are networked, to create a space on there where the content can be uploaded. So that in here, this becomes like a hub, that everyone coming in here can access local stories and local content, and they can then see that their sons, their daughters have been generating this content, and they can then teach the elders to do the same thing, and everyone can then learn to generate that content and become community reporters. But unless those actions, unless that capacity building process is embedded in processes of community development, and as he said, community networks, unless it's grounded in an embedded part of the real life of community, then it means nothing. It's just something nice to do. If it's going to be meaningful to the community, it has to be grounded in the process, and I agree. I think ICT centres, telecentres are an excellent place because of their centrality in the community, and if they're effective, they're almost like a hub for or in network theory, the sort of star or the ego connection for all of the things. All the community network can come through here, can connect to it. I think that's an excellent way of doing it. Understanding how to make the connections in the community. Who speaks to who, how, why, when, and so on, and embed it in those processes.
Yes, maybe just to add on to that, it's a very, very important topic that is brought in. The localization of the content. Because again, now, if you have content and you pass it to Mombasa people, probably Mombasa people have their own burning issues and might not be relevant. To them, that would be wastage of time and space to actually look at that particular content. But I want to borrow from one organization I had a chance to meet, Community Radio Africa. And what Community Radio Africa they do is they have a similar setup like now what you're trying to do. But more important is that they start those small community radios. And each and every Mukurima around that particular place, they will call in. One, the effectiveness of that is the old woman down there in the farm, she has a need. One, she needs to know how she needs to manage her livestock, her farm, where the market is, and the rest. She cannot come to a computer because of the capacity issue. Okay? Yet she is very much integral part of that particular community. She needs to pass the message out. Then the other issue comes of the language. Okay? She can understand English. So she can only speak in her own language. And that's why now that community radio now comes into play. Now, they are the moderators within the community radio. And one good thing with the community radio, which I believe that maybe that's where you're headed, from this particular ICT Centre, that's where you're headed, is it is real time. You don't have to wait until you get feedback. You call in, and then somebody else is actually engaging you. You also somebody else is listening on transistor radio, in the other homestead. And if a topic, he finds that particular topic very interesting, you call in again, and then you add on to what you have actually spoken. It's more or less like what you normally hear from, I think, Citizen. There is a program they normally learn, Sauti ya Mkulima, or the voice of the farmer. And farmers usually call in, talking about how their pigs are, how to manage their pigs, when they're supposed to market them and the rest. So those are some of the citizen journalism that can really help in the local community. One thing, that the citizen journalism, you don't need to be trained, but you need to use the tool that you have. Even when you go out there, the way traditional it used to be, whereby you have learners learning with messages across the villages, it was still journalism because that information has already been passed. So it doesn't have to be electronic, but now electronic has come to make now that work easier. And as we agreed, it is ICT. It can be that technology or it can be any other means of communication. It doesn't matter as long as the message is passed.
We just wanted us to run the three, but it's good we have moved to the next thing that we have to look at. To understand, then we now look at how we can use these tools for a course. It's the concept of community network. Do you understand what community network is? So if you can have maybe one or two people reacting, and then we see now how we can use these three concepts for a course. What is a community network? In fact, Mr. Kuli has mentioned it, Professor has mentioned it, and Dr. Day has mentioned it, and Enoch is the one who introduced it.
I don't know how it
It's your fault.
Yeah. But I think maybe looking at the situation here, looking at community, looking at people, and people, because networks cannot exist in a vacuum. Networks come about because of connections, either between organizations, individuals, community groups, or any other similar scenarios. So community networks, we need easy to define per se, but you can mention what actually do you mean by community networks, what is involved, what do we look at. So the issue of telecenters, or rather centers like this using ICT to promote information sharing, or using ICT to promote development, or using ICT to build personalities, whichever way that it comes about. But so when you come to a network level, then it means it is this grouping plus the other grouping and the other grouping, and other stakeholders involved with the same particular reasons of establishments to push for a common goal. So I think that's what.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I would like to express myself, or I would like to put a case where we normally do, how we do it at the village level. We are doing community work at sub-locational level. And at a sub-locational level, the activities that we normally do, like, I'll give a specific example. We organize things like education day. But at the ground, on the ground, the community, we have our own way of mobilizing ourselves, organizing, coming up with maybe budgets. Then we have also involved some other stakeholders within the diaspora. But the ones on the diaspora, we made a data. Each and every member, we have the email address. So when we have an issue, there's a secretariat in Nairobi whom on the ground, after having finalizing the report, will now send it will email to the secretariat in Nairobi, and the one in Nairobi will now either give it to the specific persons who are supposed to respond to it, or will give everyone, and they are supposed to comment, and also come up with a way forward. And for us, things are working because we can even fundraise for an activity by having that original thought from the community, and the other people now coming in and supporting the cause. Now, maybe what we have not developed much is that one on the ground. On the ground, we are using the other manual way, like maybe either SMS or using other local leaders to announce in the churches in order for people to come together. So, as much as we have also talked, I will also talk about the citizen journalism. At times, even when we look at the news that we normally have even on the newspapers, at times we are being taken for a ride. Because at times these guys are just making money, coming up with a very big titles. Then we always go there and buy the newspapers. But if you look in the inside if you look at the content, it has got nothing to do with your life. It's not changing your life. It's just mockery. I think we need to change this scenario. And the scenario is, can we also come up with the way the other people have started a good initiative? I'm interested in agriculture. Where can I get information that will make me to change my life? And if it comes from the ground, from the grassroots, I think we shall change a lot of, we shall change many people, rather than just, okay, social media. So and so is meeting so and so to have an alliance. Alliances every day, alliances, and we're buying newspapers, and they're just twisting us. Today they're changing the goalpost. But in actual sense, has it added us our value? I think we need to change. Thank you.
I just have within that community network, I think this is a very simplified version that you can go. One thing that you have to accept is that these are teams that have got a common interest. A good example is a women group network. When these are people who can come together because they are having a challenge of raising resources. They are doing table banking, for instance. So one women group may be able to link up with another women group in another area, or youth group. So with a purpose, for instance, like youth networks, they share, they come together for social activities, those like games, and through this they are able to educate one another. And I believe in the current world, if at all you have to make a change and make any development, then community networks really need to be given upper hand in whichever direction they are. But again, one thing that, as my colleague has shared, these they give the region, whichever, where they're coming from, certain powers, a sense of belonging, and whenever they are feeling recognized, whenever they're taking their activities. And I appreciate the community citizens, the issue of the community generating the ideas that can really transform. Because we find generations, there are good practices that we lose by time. But again, if at all this can be documented and kept within particular areas, it's not that we are developing that regionalism so much, but this one may be able to help us as a case study of a certain region or a certain area that has succeeded in performing or transforming the lives. I believe the issues we are talking about, be it agriculture, health, all these economic empowerment strategies, we find the networks within whichever area are really potential. The only thing that I believe as a challenge stage, which really need to be addressed, is how we can, some of these things are so, in remote areas, they've not gone so much technological, they've not adopted this technology, the modern technologies. So they may not really be seen as important, but I appreciate they have certain values that if at all can be nurtured, then whenever we are talking about peace hence should be able to be available within certain regions.
I want us now, as a request, we've seen the concept of social media, and it's more of the new technologies that are coming up, and we looked at them, like example Facebook, Twitter, and the rest. We have looked at the concept of citizen journalism, where everybody can be a reporter. You can go and report to a radio station physically without using modern technology. You can create a blog and share your stories. You can also share the same story with the mainstream media. And if we are keen nowadays, in every TV station, they have, during the prime time news, they have time for reading Twitter updates. So it's like a reverse where the mainstream media is now following the citizen journalism. And that is the trend that is fast growing. And then we also agree that the aspect of community networks has nothing to do with physical interactions from what we are getting. More of physical space. It does not require people to be meeting physically for something to happen. We have seen the case study of some of them using just email to get people from maybe abroad to do a course. We have looked at the concept of talking about different groups that share common interests. Now, if we have all this, how can we use these techniques, tools that we have to come up with a local or a community-based project, or push for a community cause, for example, peace? For example, Kibugat, was a hotspot. How can the local say, no, this place is peaceful, or will not engage in violence, and come up with that as their stand? If you're talking of people engaging in agriculture, how can we use the concept of social media, citizen journalism, and now the existing community networks in these areas to come up with a project or push for a cause or upscale an existing project? So I want us now to try the three and let us be clear, brief, and try to give maybe example, because most of us are involved in community projects. Probably we also here to learn what others are doing.
Can I just say something? I think we need to be very careful that we don't, because I picked up a very different message here. I picked up the importance of existing community networks and relationships, of existing community communication channels. Now, it's no accident that the first stem, the stem of the word communications and community are the same. Communications is the lifeblood of community life. It's what makes communities active, what makes them thrive, it's what makes them successful. Embedded in communities, without technology in terms of ICTs, if we ignore that for one moment, there already exists a whole range of different means of communications. Information communication technologies should not be seen as a means of replacing those existing technology, communication channels, but building on them, creating additional platforms and enabling connectivity between what exists already and new forms, if you want, of communications. And so, if you develop an ICT application for peace or for sharing knowledge about pig farming or whatever it is, it has to connect to the other so that other people who don't use the technologies aren't excluded from that process and can be part and parcel of that. It's very important that the community communication platforms all feed into one another and they're accessible to everyone. Not everyone will choose to be able to do that. They may not have the capability, as you said, but they should at least have that right to do that, and people can come in. There's a lot more to say about citizen journalism, but I'll leave that for my presentation.
What that really means is that we should not disrupt the existing, maybe social communication systems. For example, and then we are talking about localizing the content. Maybe in the Kalenjin community, if something happens, maybe to a child, probably the first person, the more channel of communication maybe is through the mother, then to the father. Or how do you report maybe to the village elder, then to the chief. So I think clearly is that the modern technology should not disrupt the existing social networks that we have. So we go back to the three. How do we tie this